The narrow, winding road, bleached by the Tuscan sun, had finally given way to a gravel path that crunched melodically beneath the tires of the rental car. Clara gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration humming beneath her skin. For weeks, the restoration of Villa Belladonna had been a symphony of digital blueprints and frantic transatlantic calls. Now, she was here, bathed in the late afternoon light, the scent of cypress and sun-warmed earth filtering through the open window. The villa emerged from a screen of ancient olive trees, a honey-colored dream rising against the impossibly blue sky. It was older than she'd imagined, more imposing, yet exquisitely proportioned. Terracotta tiles glowed on its roof, and ivy clung to stone walls that seemed to hum with centuries of stories. This wasn't just another project. It was a living, breathing testament to time, and for the next month it was hers to oversee, to coax its final secrets into the light. She parked in the shade of a magnificent oak, its branches spreading like benevolent arms. Turning off the engine, the sudden silence was profound, broken only by the distant buzz of cicadas and the whisper of a breeze through the leaves. Clara took a deep breath, letting the clean, fragrant air fill her lungs. This was an escape, a necessary solitude after a particularly draining year. She was here to work, yes, but also to breathe, to remember what it felt like to simply obey. Her sensible leather tote slung over her shoulder, she approached the colossal wooden door, its iron studs cool beneath her fingertips. The key, heavy and ornate, felt important in her palm as she turned it, the mechanism groaning with a satisfying thud. The door swung inward, revealing a cool, shadowed hall. The air inside was hushed, carrying the subtle perfume of old wood, beeswax and dried lavender. She stepped across the threshold, her heels clicking on the polished marble. To her left, an arched doorway led to what she knew from the plans was the grand salon. To her right, a sweeping staircase ascended into the dimness. Everything was just as she'd designed it, yet imbued with a spirit that no blueprint could ever capture. The furniture, newly upholstered in rich velvets and linens, waited patiently, already seeming to settle into the embrace of the ancient walls. Sunlight streamed through tall windows at the far end of the hall, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden sprites. Her allocated suite was on the second floor, overlooking the central courtyard, and, beyond that, the terraced vineyards that sloped down to the valley floor. The room was spacious, elegant, with high ceilings and a frescoed ceiling depicting frolicking cherubs and verdant vines. A large canopied bed, draped in sheer linen, dominated the space, its pillows plump and inviting. She ran a hand over the cool, crisp sheets, a sigh escaping her lips. After unpacking the bare essentials, Clara couldn't resist. She ventured onto the balcony, the wrought iron railing warm beneath her palms. The view was breathtaking. Rows of grapevines, meticulously tended, stretched like emerald ribbons across the rolling hills. In the distance, a small village clustered around a bell tower, its stone buildings glowing faintly in the softening light. The air was alive with the scent of thyme and wild rosemary, and a profound sense of peace settled over her. She closed her eyes, letting the sun warm her face, imagining the stories these ancient stones had witnessed. She was so engrossed that she almost didn't hear it. A faint, melodic strumming, accompanied by a low, resonant voice. It wasn't Italian, not quite. It had a rougher, more earthy quality, a melody that felt both ancient and deeply sensual. Her eyes snapped open. The sound seemed to drift from somewhere below, perhaps the courtyard or one of the ground floor studies. Curiosity, a rare indulgence for her usually pragmatic mind, tugged at her. She descended the grand staircase, her steps hushed, following the siren call of the music. It led her to the library, a vast room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves overflowing with leather-bound volumes. The scent of old paper and cedar was intoxicating. And there, by a window that overlooked a small secluded garden, sat a man. He was sprawled in a deep armchair, a classical guitar resting across his lap, his fingers stilling on the strings as she paused in the doorway. He hadn't seen her, not yet. His head was tilted back, eyes closed, a faint smile playing on his lips, as if still lost in the echo of his own music. He was magnificent. Dark, unruly hair, the color of rich espresso, fell across a high forehead. A strong, aquiline nose, lips that were full and sensuous, and a jawline that spoke of quiet determination. He wore a simple, unbuttoned linen shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms dusted with dark hair. His chest was broad, tanned, a few dark curls peeking from the opening of his shirt. Clara felt a sudden, inexplicable tightening in her chest, a quickening of her pulse. It was as if the air itself had thickened, charged with an invisible energy. She had spent a lifetime building walls, cultivating a detached professionalism, but in this moment those walls felt disturbingly porous. He opened his eyes then slowly, as if waking from a deep dream. They were startlingly blue, the color of the deepest Mediterranean Sea, fringed with long dark lashes. They found hers across the room, and for a long moment, time seemed to halt. A silent current, potent and undeniable, arced between them. She felt utterly seen, stripped bare by that intense gaze, yet strangely unafraid. A slow smile spread across his face, not quite a smirk, but a knowing curve of his lips that sent a shiver down her spine. "I didn't hear you come in," he said, his voice a low rumble, exactly as she'd imagined it would be, rich, textured, with a hint of something foreign, an accent she couldn't quite place. It was the same voice that had been singing, carrying a warmth that resonated deep within her. I heard the music," Clara managed, her own voice sounding breathy and unfamiliar. "It was beautiful." He inclined his head, a gesture, both elegant and subtly sensual. "Thank you. I find it helps the soul settle after a long day." He rose then, uncoiling from the chair with an effortless grace that belied his powerful build. He was taller than she'd expected, his presence filling the room. He moved towards her, slowly, deliberately, and she found herself unable to avert her gaze. "You must be Clara Vance," he said, extending a hand. His palm was calloused, warm, his grip firm but gentle. A spark, a jolt, passed between them. She felt the warmth spread up her arm, blooming in her chest. "And you are?" she prompted, realizing she hadn't been given a name. "Julian. He paused, his thumb stroking lightly over the back of her hand before he released it. The fleeting touch left a lingering heat. "Julian Moretti. I'm the owner's nephew. I manage the estate." "Ah," Clara said, suddenly feeling a blush creep up her neck. Of course. The elusive Moretti heir, always just out of reach during the design phase. She dealt with his aunt, a formidable woman with impeccable taste. "It's a magnificent villa, Julian. Truly. It has its charms," he agreed, his eyes sweeping over her, a lingering appraisal that was both respectful and deeply intimate. "And you, Miss Vance, are responsible for much of its renewed beauty. Your work is exceptional." "Thank you," she murmured, feeling a strange mix of flattery and discomfort under his intense scrutiny. His gaze was like a physical touch, tracing the lines of her body, lingering on her lips. "So, the final touches then?" he asked, his voice a low murmur that seemed to wrap around her. "A month to ensure everything is perfect?" "Precisely. And to supervise the landscaping team." She felt the need to sound professional, to reassert the boundaries that his mere presence had begun to dissolve. "A month?" he repeated, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. "This villa has a way of keeping people longer than they expect, or changing them." He stepped closer, his scent reaching her, a clean, masculine aroma, mingled with the faint, intriguing smell of sun and earth, and something uniquely his. Something uniquely his. "I'm here for work," Clara stated, perhaps a little too firmly. Julian chuckled, a soft, rich sound. "Of course. And the villa welcomes all who come with purpose, but it also has a way of revealing other purposes." His blue eyes held hers, a challenge, an invitation. "Are you hungry, Clara Vance? I was about to prepare some dinner. My housekeeper, Elena, she's away visiting family." The offer was unexpected, intimate. Her stomach, which she'd forgotten existed, rumbled faintly. I wouldn't want to impose." "Nonsense," he said, dismissing her protest with a wave of his hand. "There's enough for two." And it would be a shame for you to eat alone on your first night here? Unless you prefer solitude? His tone was teasing, yet genuinely inviting. She found herself smiling, a genuine, unforced smile that surprised her. No, I'd love to join you, Julian. Excellent. He turned, his broad shoulders filling the doorway as he led the way towards the kitchen. I hope you like fresh pasta. And a good, strong Chianti. The kitchen was a revelation. A modern marvel of stainless steel and gleaming copper pots, yet still retaining the rustic charm of the villa. A large wooden island dominated the center, already laden with fresh vegetables, herbs, and a bowl of golden pasta dough. Julian moved with an easy competence, his hands deft as he chopped garlic, the scent sharp and invigorating. Clara found herself leaning against the doorframe, watching him. The way the muscles flexed in his forearms as he kneaded the dough, the intensity in his gaze as he focused on the task. There was a raw, primal appeal to him, a man comfortable in his own skin, capable and self-assured. It was undeniably attractive. Can I help? She offered, tearing her gaze away from his hands. He glanced up, a quick, warm smile. You can open the wine. It's in the rack by the window. There's a bottle of the 2018 Reserva. She retrieved the bottle, its label an elegant testament to the villa's own vineyard. As she struggled with the corkscrew, Julian came to her side, his presence suddenly very close. She felt the heat radiating from him, the subtle brush of his arm against hers. Her breath hitched. Allow me, he murmured, his voice a low rumble beside her ear. His fingers brushed hers as he took the corkscrew, and the contact was electric, sending a jolt through her. He uncorked the bottle with an easy twist, the cork popping with a satisfying sigh. He poured a small amount into a glass, swirled it, sniffed, then took a sip, his eyes closing in apparent appreciation. When he opened them, they met hers, dark and knowing. Perfect. He filled 2 glasses, handing one to her. Their fingers brushed again, and this time, the touch lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the palpable tension that had sprung up between them. They sat at a small rustic table in the kitchen, the soft glow of a single hanging lamp illuminating their faces. The pasta, tossed with fresh tomatoes, basil, and a generous shaving of parmesan, was exquisite. The wine, a deep ruby red, flowed freely, loosening Clara's tongue, melting away the last vestiges of her professional reserve. They talked about the villa, its history, the challenges of modernizing an ancient structure. Julian spoke of his family's long connection to the land, his passion for the vineyards, the subtle art of winemaking. He was articulate, intelligent, and possessed a quiet charm that drew her in, making her forget her weariness, her solitude. So, Clara Vance, he said, swirling the last of his wine, his gaze intense. What brought you to architecture, a woman of such refined taste? The compliment, delivered in his deep voice, felt like a caress. She smiled, a little self-consciously. I've always been drawn to spaces, to how they shape us, and how we shape them. It's about creating beauty, functionality, and a sense of belonging. She paused, then added, and a little bit of escaping, perhaps. His eyes held hers. Escaping what? The question was direct, disarmingly personal. She hesitated. A life that felt too constrained, too predictable. And is this unpredictable enough for you? He asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken meanings. His gaze was warm, intimate, delving into her unspoken desires. It's certainly a change, she admitted, her voice barely audible. The wine, the hour, his proximity, it all combined to create an intoxicating atmosphere. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. Sometimes change is exactly what we need, especially when it finds us unexpectedly. The dishes were cleared, the last drops of wine savored. The evening had deepened, the cicadas outside now a relentless chorus. Julian led her to the grand salon where a fire had been laid. He knelt, striking a match, and soon flames danced in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the opulent furnishings. They sat on a plush velvet sofa, the warmth of the fire embracing them. The conversation softened, became more intimate, punctuated by comfortable silences. Clara found herself telling him things she rarely shared, about her dreams, her frustrations, the quiet yearning for something more. Julian listened, his gaze unwavering, his presence a steady anchor in the swirling currents of her thoughts. "Do you ever feel," she began, her voice low, "that you're waiting for something? Something you can't quite name, but you know it's out there?" He turned his head slowly, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Always, and sometimes it arrives without warning, like a storm on a clear day." A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and rain began to patter against the glass, growing quickly into a steady downpour. The storm he spoke of was literally arriving. "It sounds like the villa is putting on a show for you," Julian mused, a hint of amusement in his voice. "It likes to make an impression." The room grew darker, the fire in the single lamp their only source of light. The air felt heavy, charged. Julian shifted on the sofa, turning to face her fully. His arm rested on the back of the sofa, his fingers almost brushing her hair. "Are you afraid of storms, Clara?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her. "No," she whispered, her gaze fixed on his. "Not really. I find them exhilarating." "Good," he said, his eyes darkening, pulling her further into their depths. "Because sometimes the most exhilarating things are also the most dangerous." He leaned closer, and her breath hitched in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden electric silence between them. His scent enveloped her now, the subtle musk of his skin, the faint hint of wine, the fresh, clean smell of the rain carried in on the wind. She could feel the warmth emanating from his body, a silent invitation. Her gaze dropped to his lips, full and tempting, and she felt an undeniable pull, a magnetic force drawing her in. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to maintain her carefully constructed distance, but a deeper, more primitive part of her yearned to surrender. He lifted a hand, slowly, deliberately, his fingers brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a shiver through her, a wave of pure sensation. His thumb lingered, tracing the curve of her jawline, his touch incredibly gentle, yet imbued with an intense, unspoken desire. "You have very expressive eyes, Clara Vance," he murmured, his voice a low thrum against the backdrop of the storm. "They tell a story you haven't quite articulated yet." She couldn't speak, couldn't move. She was trapped, exquisitely so, in the orbit of his gaze, the intoxicating proximity of his body. Her skin tingled, alive with an awareness she hadn't felt in years. Her lips parted slightly, an unconscious invitation. He leaned in further, his breath warm against her cheek. "And I suspect," he whispered, his voice a silken caress, "that story is just beginning." His eyes dropped to her lips, and for a heart-stopping moment she thought he would kiss her. The anticipation was excruciating, a sweet agony that made her entire body tremble. She could almost taste him, feel the brush of his mouth against hers. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, his thumb stroked slowly, sensuously, along her lower lip, a tantalizing whisper of a touch that sent fire racing through her veins. His gaze was locked on hers, a silent question, a powerful promise. The storm outside raged, matching the tempest brewing within her. She knew, with a certainty that chilled and thrilled her, that her carefully ordered world had just been irrevocably altered. And this was only the beginning. And this was only the beginning. Ilara's breath hitched, a soft involuntary sound swallowed by the roar of the wind outside. His thumb, still tracing the curve of her lower lip, felt like a brand, igniting a trail of exquisite heat that spread through her entire body. Her mind, usually so meticulously organized, was a riot of sensation, a tempest mirroring the one beyond the windows. She felt a primal pull, an instinct she hadn't known she possessed, drawing her irrevocably towards him. His eyes, dark pools reflecting the muted light, held hers captive. A silent question, yes, but also an undeniable invitation, a promise of depths she had only ever dreamed of. She leaned in, a fraction of an inch, a silent, desperate plea for him to close the distance. A low, guttural sound rumbled in his chest, a sound of raw pleasure and anticipation that vibrated through her, even without direct touch. Then, finally, he moved. Slowly, deliberately, as if savoring every microsecond of the journey, his head tilted, his gaze still locked on hers, until his mouth finally, blessedly, met hers. It was a feather-light touch at first, a gentle press that sent shivers down her spine, a tentative exploration that was both agonizing and utterly thrilling. He tasted of rain in something subtly masculine, an intoxicating blend that made her head swim. Her lips parted, an unspoken invitation, and he accepted, deepening the kiss with a soft sigh that seemed to echo the release of her own pent-up desire. His mouth moved over hers with a practiced tenderness, a slow, sensual dance that left her breathless. He kissed her as if she were the most precious, fragile thing, yet with an underlying power that promised to consume her. Her hands, which had been frozen at her sides, now lifted, finding purchase on his shoulders. The fabric of his shirt was soft beneath her fingertips, the muscle beneath taut and warm. She clung to him, needing the anchor, needing the connection as her carefully constructed composure crumbled around her. He groaned into the kiss, a soft, hungry sound, and his arms finally came around her, drawing her flush against his solid frame. The sudden closeness was a shock, a jolt of pure electricity. Her breasts, already aching with a phantom longing, pressed against his chest, her hips met his, and a jolt of heat shot through her core. The storm outside intensified, a symphony of crashing waves and howling wind. But all Ilara could hear was the frantic beat of her own heart, and the soft, insistent rhythm of their kiss. His lips became more demanding, more urgent, yet still exquisitely tender. He explored the contours of her mouth, his tongue a warm, silken intrusion that coaxed a soft moan from her. She responded instinctively, her own tongue meeting his, a shy, curious dance that quickly blossomed into a fervent tango. The taste of him filled her senses, intoxicating and addictive. She felt herself melting into him, losing the edges of her own identity, becoming a part of something larger, more elemental. His hands, strong and warm, moved from her back, tracing the curve of her spine, sending shivers through her skin. They settled on her waist, drawing her even closer, until there was no space left between them, only the delicious pressure of their bodies intertwined. She tilted her head back, offering him more, demanding more, and he responded with a renewed intensity that left her dizzy. When he finally broke the kiss, it was only by a breath, their foreheads still touching, their lips still tingling, their breaths mingling in the charged air. His eyes, now slightly unfocused, were still locked on hers, dark and brimming with a desire that mirrored her own. "Ilara," he murmured, her name a rough caress on his lips, a revelation of its sound from his voice that sent a fresh wave of heat through her. "You taste incredible." Her cheeks flushed, a warmth spreading across her skin. She couldn't speak, her throat tight with emotion, her body thrumming with a million unheard sensations. She simply gazed at him, her eyes wide, vulnerable, completely open. He smiled then, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that sent a fresh jolt through her. "You're shaking," he whispered, his thumb stroking her cheekbone, a tender gesture that belied the burning intensity in his gaze. "So are you," she managed, her voice a little breathless, a little shaky. She felt a lightness in her chest, a giddiness that was entirely new and exhilarating. His smile deepened, and he leaned in again, pressing a soft kiss to her temple, then her cheek, trailing a path of fire towards the sensitive skin behind her ear. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he confessed, his voice a low rumble that sent delicious shivers down her neck. "Since you stood there, drenched and defiant, looking like a goddess of the storm." His words, so direct, so revealing, stole her breath away. A goddess of the storm. She, Ilara Vance, meticulously ordered librarian, always proper, always contained. The image was so far from her usual self, yet in his eyes she saw it, she felt it. She felt powerful, untamed, desirable. His lips found her neck, leaving a trail of soft, open-mouthed kisses that made her arch into him. Her fingers tightened on his shoulders, clinging to the warmth of his skin beneath the fabric. He smelled of sea salt and rain, of something uniquely him, and she buried her face in the hollow of his shoulder, inhaling deeply, wanting to drown in his scent. "Julian," she whispered, her voice muffled against his skin, the name a sweet release on her tongue. It felt right, felt natural, to say his name in this intimate space. In this moment of raw vulnerability and soaring desire. He paused, his kisses ceasing, his head lifting slightly. "You remember my name," he said, a note of pleased surprise in his tone. She pulled back just enough to look at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "How could I forget?" His eyes crinkled at the corners, a genuine warmth radiating from him that made her heart ache with a longing she hadn't known she possessed. He lifted a hand, his fingers tangling in her still damp hair, gently pushing a strand away from her face. "Come," he murmured, his voice a low invitation that promised untold pleasures. He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, and led her away from the doorway, deeper into the cozy warmth of the cottage. The living area was bathed in the soft glow of the fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. A plush, oversized sofa, piled high with cushions and throws, beckoned from the center of the room. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and something subtly spicy, a comforting sensual aroma that further disarmed her. He didn't release her hand, but instead pulled her gently down onto the sofa beside him. The cushions yielded, enveloping them in their softness. The roar of the storm outside seemed to fade, replaced by the crackle and hiss of the fire, a comforting counterpoint to the tempest brewing within her. He turned to her, his knee brushing against her thigh, sending a fresh wave of heat through her. His gaze was tender, yet still held that potent spark of desire that both thrilled and intimidated her. "You're still cold," he observed, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, which was still cool from the earlier rain. Without a word, he reached for a thick, wool throw draped over the back of the sofa, and carefully, tenderly, wrapped it around her shoulders. The gesture, so simple, so thoughtful, touched her deeply. It was a small act of care, a testament to the gentle nature that lay beneath his rugged exterior, and it made her heart swell. She pulled the throw tighter around her, luxuriating in its warmth, and in the warmth of his presence beside her. "Better?" he asked, his voice soft, his eyes searching hers. She nodded, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "Mush." He didn't move away, but instead allowed his hand to rest on her knee, a light, reassuring weight. The contact was electric, a constant hum beneath her skin. She found herself mesmerized by the play of firelight on his face, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw, the subtle stubble, the depth in his eyes. He was undeniably handsome, but it was more than just physical attractiveness. It was the way he looked at her, the way he made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in a very long time. "Tell me, Alara," he began, his voice low and intimate, "what brings you out to the edges of the world in a storm like this?" The question, so calm, so conversational, in the midst of such raw desire, caught her by surprise. It was a gentle invitation to talk, to connect on another level, and she found herself wanting to share. I came for solitude," she admitted, her gaze dropping to their clasped hands, suddenly feeling a little shy. "To escape, I suppose, from expectations, from a life that felt too small." He listened intently, his thumb still stroking her skin, a comforting, grounding rhythm. "And did you find it?" She looked up, meeting his gaze. A soft, knowing smile played on his lips. "I found something else entirely," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled, a rich, warm sound that filled the small space. "Good. Solitude is overrated." His thumb moved from her hand to her inner thigh, a slow, deliberate stroke that made her gasp softly. The throw was still around her, but his touch was direct, intimate, sending a fresh wave of heat through her veins. "Julian," she breathed, her eyes widening, her body arching imperceptibly towards his touch. His eyes, dark with desire, held hers. "Tell me to stop," he challenged, his voice a low, husky murmur. "Tell me you don't feel this too." She couldn't. The truth was, she felt it with an intensity that bordered on overwhelming. Every nerve ending in her body was alive, humming, craving more of his touch, more of his presence. Her carefully constructed walls, built over years of quiet solitude, were crumbling, revealing a yearning she hadn't known she possessed. Her hand lifted, almost involuntarily, to cup his jaw, her thumb brushing over the rough stubble there. His skin was warm beneath her touch, his muscles taut. She leaned in, her gaze locked on his, a silent answer to his challenge. He groaned, a deep guttural sound from his chest, and his head dipped, his lips claiming hers once more. This kiss was different. It was less a question, more a statement. A statement of raw, undeniable desire, of a passion that had been simmering beneath the surface and now threatened to consume them both. His mouth moved over hers with a hungry urgency, his tongue delving deep, exploring every sensitive curve. She responded with an equal fervor, her hands tangling in his hair, tugging gently, pulling him closer, wanting to merge with him, to feel every inch of him against her. His hand, which had been resting on her thigh, now moved higher, sliding beneath the wool throw, beneath the hem of her dress, to rest on the bare skin of her upper thigh. His touch was scorching, a jolt of pure pleasure that made her hips instinctively press against his. She gasped into the kiss, a soft, broken sound that was swallowed by his mouth. He pulled back slightly, just enough to catch his breath, his eyes still closed for a moment, savoring the taste of her. When he opened them, they were dark, smoky, burning with an almost feral desire. "Ilara," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what you do to me." She smiled, a slow, sensual smile that felt entirely new on her lips. "I think I'm beginning to have an idea." Her fingers, still tangled in his hair, now threaded through the soft strands at the nape of his neck, her touch light, teasing. He groaned again, leaning into her touch. His hand on her thigh began to move, slowly, sensuously, upward. His fingertips brushed against the delicate lace of her underwear, a whisper-like touch that sent a jolt of pure electricity through her. Her breath hitched, her body tensing, then relaxing into the exquisite sensation. "So soft," he murmured, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin there, making her shiver. "Like silk." She felt herself blush, a deep flush spreading across her chest and neck. No one had ever touched her with such open reverence, such tender desire. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly intoxicating. He leaned in again, his lips finding the sensitive skin just below her ear, trailing soft kisses down her jawline to the hollow of her throat. Each touch, each breath, sent tremors through her, igniting a fire in her core that spread rapidly through her veins. Her head fell back against the cushions, offering him full access, surrendering to the exquisite sensations he was awakening within her. His other hand, which had been resting on her waist, now moved to the small of her back, pressing her even closer, until her body was molded against his. She could feel the hard planes of his chest, the warmth of his skin radiating through their clothes. The scent of him, clean and masculine, filled her nostrils, making her head spin. His lips found the pulse point at the base of her throat, and he lingered there. A soft suckle that made a moan escape her lips. She felt a delicious weakness spread through her limbs, her carefully constructed composure completely undone. "You're beautiful, Ilara," he whispered, his voice hoarse with desire, his lips still tracing fire on her skin. "Utterly, breathtakingly beautiful." His words, spoken with such raw sincerity, made her heart pound. She had never thought of herself as beautiful. Elegant, perhaps. Intelligent, certainly. But beautiful. It felt like a revelation, a gift he was bestowing upon her. His hand on her inner thigh continued its slow, tantalizing ascent, his fingers brushing against the delicate fabric, teasing the very edge of intimacy. She arched into his touch, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The storm outside raged, a furious symphony of wind and rain, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. One of passion and raw, undeniable desire. He moved his head, his lips returning to hers, but this time the kiss was deeper, more urgent, tinged with a delicious desperation. His tongue explored her mouth with a newfound boldness, mirroring the ascent of his hand. She met him with equal fervor, her body trembling with a mixture of excitement and longing. His fingers finally reached the apex of her thigh, his touch light, exquisitely tender, yet undeniably purposeful. He stroked gently, delicately, through the thin fabric, and Alara gasped. A soft, involuntary cry that was lost in the depths of their kiss. A wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over her, making her entire body clench and tremble. "So responsive," he murmured against her lips, his voice a low, husky whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "Oh, delicious." He broke the kiss, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes, which were wide, dark, and swimming with desire. A slow, sensual smile spread across his face, a look of profound satisfaction and anticipation. "May I?" he asked, his voice low, his eyes burning into hers, a silent question that held immense power. She didn't need words. Her answer was in the way her body leaned into his, in the way her hand reached up to cup his cheek, in the way her eyes, full of trust and longing, pleaded with him to continue. He took her silence as consent, a deep, satisfied sigh escaping his lips. His thumb brushed over the delicate lace, teasing the fabric. Slowly, oh so slowly, pushing it aside. The sudden rush of cool air against her heated skin, followed immediately by the warm, firm press of his fingers, was almost too much to bear. Alara gasped, her eyes fluttering closed, her head falling back against the cushions. A delicious current of sensation shot through her, radiating from the point of contact, spreading through her limbs, making her entire body hum, with a profound, aching pleasure. His touch was gentle, reverent, yet incredibly potent. He explored her, slowly, deliberately, learning her curves, her sensitivities, coaxing her body to respond with an intensity she had never imagined possible. She felt a dizzying rush, a melting sensation deep within her core. Her hips began to move instinctively, pressing into his hand, seeking more, craving the exquisite friction he was creating. A soft moan escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure that echoed in the quiet room. His lips found hers again, a soft, tender kiss that was meant to soothe, to reassure, even as his fingers worked their magic. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, consuming her gasps and moans, making her feel safe and utterly desired all at once. The storm outside still raged, but Alara felt as if she were floating, suspended in a bubble of pure sensation, with nothing but Julian's touch and his kiss anchoring her to reality. Her world had indeed been irrevocably altered. It was no longer small, no longer contained. It was vast, boundless, and filled with a passion she had only just begun to discover. And this was only the beginning. And this was only the beginning. Julian's lips left hers for a breathless moment, just long enough for Alara to catch a shuddering gasp, before descending again, tracing a searing path along her jawline, down the delicate curve of her neck. Each touch, each whisper-like brush of his stubble against her skin, sent a jolt of pure electricity through her, igniting nerve endings she hadn't known existed. Her fingers, still tangled in the silky strands of his hair, tightened their grip, anchoring herself to him as her knees threatened to buckle beneath her. He pressed her back gently until her spine met the cool stone of the fireplace hearth. The rough texture was a grounding contrast to the firestorm he was igniting within her. His hands, strong and sure, moved from her waist, sliding upwards, tracing the elegant line of her ribs beneath the thin fabric of her dress. Her breath hitched as his thumbs brushed the sides of her breasts, a soft, deliberate caress that promised more. Her nipples, already puckered and sensitive, ached for his direct touch. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice a low rumble against her skin, "you are exquisite." The compliment, laced with such raw desire, made her tremble. She had never felt exquisite before. Pretty, perhaps. Pleasant. But never exquisite, never desirable in this profound, all-consuming way. With a soft groan, she arched into him, a silent plea for more, for everything. His lips found the hollow of her throat, lingering there, tasting her skin, and Ilara felt a rush of heat bloom deep in her belly. He was exploring her, learning her, and she was an eager student, a willing landscape for his discovery. The scent of him, rich, earthy, a touch of wood smoke and something uniquely masculine, filled her senses, intoxicating her, making her dizzy with longing. He shifted, his body pressing more fully against hers, and she could feel the hard ridge of his desire through the layers of their clothing. The undeniable evidence of his arousal sent a thrill through her, a powerful affirmation of his longing. It mirrored her own, a desperate ache that pulsed between her thighs, demanding release. "Let me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, as his fingers, surprisingly nimble, went to the buttons of her dress. The fine silk fabric, which moments ago had felt like a luxurious second skin, now felt like a barrier, a frustrating impediment to the skin-on-skin contact she craved. Ilara's own hands, fumbling slightly, went to the fastenings of his shirt. Her fingers brushed against the warm, solid expanse of his chest as she struggled with the small buttons. He chuckled, a low, husky sound that vibrated against her, and then his hands were there, covering hers, guiding them, making the task seem effortless. In moments, the heavy wool of his shirt was open, revealing the sculpted musculature beneath, a landscape of corded muscle and dark, enticing hair. She traced the line of his collarbone, feeling the heat radiate from his skin, before letting her fingers drift lower, through the soft hair that matted his chest. He shivered at her touch, a barely perceptible tremor that thrilled her. It was a powerful sensation, this ability to elicit such a reaction from him. As her dress slowly yielded to his touch, slipping off her shoulders, Ilara felt a delicious vulnerability, a thrilling exposure. The cool air of the room, punctuated by the roar of the fire, kissed her bared skin, sending goosebumps dancing across her arms. He pushed the fabric down her arms, allowing it to pool at her waist, revealing the delicate lace chemise she wore beneath. His eyes, dark and intense, devoured the sight of her, a silent appreciation that made her blush fiercely, yet also filled her with a powerful sense of pride. He reached out, his finger tracing the lace edge of her chemise, just above the swell of her breast. "Beautiful," he murmured again, his voice hoarse. With a gentle tug, he pulled the straps of the chemise down, revealing the creamy expanse of her shoulders, then the soft curve of her breast. Ilara gasped as the cool air met her bared skin, and then Julian's lips were there, brushing lightly over the sensitive skin just above her nipple. A moan escaped her, a sound she barely recognized as her own, raw and unrestrained. He suckled gently, teasingly, through the thin fabric, and Ilara felt her entire body clench in response. Her hands gripped his shoulders, her nails digging lightly into the firm muscle beneath his shirt. He lifted his head, his gaze locked with hers, eyes burning with an ancient hunger. "My Ilara," he whispered, "I have wanted you since the moment I saw you." The confession, so openly stated, stole her breath. She had felt the pull, the undeniable connection, but to hear him articulate it, to know it was mutual, was both terrifying and exhilarating. It cemented the reality of what was happening between them, this powerful, unstoppable current. He knelt before her, his strong hands sliding down her waist, drawing the dress and chemise with them. Ilara stepped out of the tangled fabric, feeling utterly exposed, yet utterly safe in his presence. She stood before him in only her silk stockings and garters, a blush rising from her chest to her cheeks. She was not used to being seen like this, so vulnerable, so open. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only reverence and a profound consuming desire. His gaze lingered on her legs, then slowly, deliberately, rose to meet her eyes. A silent question hung in the air, a deep respect for her agency, even in this heightened state of passion. Elara nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement, but it was enough. It was her consent, her surrender, her affirmation that this was what she wanted, what she craved. He rose then, gathering her into his arms. Elara wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively, her body molding against his. He carried her through the flickering shadows of the room, the firelight dancing on their skin, illuminating their shared desire. The storm outside continued its furious symphony, a fitting backdrop to the tempest brewing within them. He laid her gently on the vast, soft expanse of the bed, its silken sheets cool against her heated skin. He leaned over her, his hands framing her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. His eyes, dark as midnight, held hers, a silent promise, a profound connection. "Are you warm enough?" he murmured, his breath hot against her face. "The fire is roaring, but the storm." Elara reached up, her fingers threading through his hair, pulling his head down. "I am more than warm enough, Julian," she whispered, her voice husky with emotion. "I am burning." A slow smile spread across his face, a possessive, satisfied smile that sent a shiver of pure delight through her. He kissed her then deeply, thoroughly, his tongue tracing the curve of her lips, asking for entry. Elara opened to him without hesitation, meeting his passion with her own burgeoning fire. His weight settled over her, not heavy but substantial, comforting. She reveled in the feel of his hard body against her soft curves, the exciting contrast a potent reminder of their differences, and how perfectly they fit together. Her hands roamed over his back, marveling at the strength she felt beneath her fingertips, the ripple of muscle as he moved. He broke the kiss, trailing a line of open-mouthed kisses down her jaw, along her throat, to the pulse beating wildly at its base. Elara arched her neck, giving him full access, her fingers tangling in his hair, urging him closer. His lips found the hollow between her collarbones, then moved lower, over the swell of her breast. He took one rosy peek into his mouth, suckling gently, testing the exquisite sensitivity. A gasp tore from Elara's throat, her hips arching instinctively, pressing herself into his rising desire. He repeated the action on her other breast, driving her to the brink of sensation, her body humming with a pleasure so intense it was almost pain. He continued his delicious assault, his tongue laving, his teeth gently nipping, until Elara was writhing beneath him, lost in a haze of pure sensation. Her mind emptied of everything but the feel of his mouth, the exquisite tug, the rising tide of pure, unadulterated desire. His hand, warm and firm, slid down her belly, tracing the delicate curve of her hip, then moving lower between her thighs. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She tensed for a moment, a flicker of nervous apprehension, a vestige of her former self, but it was quickly obliterated by the sheer force of her craving. She shifted, opening herself to him, inviting his touch. His fingers brushed against the sensitive skin between her legs, sending a shockwave through her. He was gentle, tentative at first, exploring the soft folds, coaxing her open. Elara gasped, her eyes fluttering shut, her head rolling on the pillow. The storm outside seemed to recede, replaced by the roar of blood in her ears, the frantic beating of her heart. He found her, the very core of her desire, and a soft moan escaped her lips. His touch was exquisite, delicate yet firm, teasing and circling, building the pressure with an expert hand. Elara felt herself unraveling, her body tightening, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She pushed up against his hand, seeking more, needing more. "Julian," she choked out, his name a desperate plea. He leaned down, pressing a fervent kiss to her lips, drawing her cries into his mouth. His touch grew more insistent, more demanding, mirroring the urgent rhythm of her own body. The pleasure was overwhelming, a spiraling vortex that consumed her, pulling her deeper and deeper. Her body convulsed, a wave of pure, unadulterated ecstasy washing over her. She cried out, a long, drawn-out moan of release, her nails digging into his shoulders, her back arching off the bed. Julian held her tight, his lips still pressed to hers, swallowing her cries, sharing her climax. The tremors slowly subsided, leaving her breathless, weak, and utterly sated. She lay panting beneath him, her body tingling, her mind a blissful blank. He kissed her forehead, then her eyelids, his tenderness a balm to her overstimulated senses. He shifted, rising slightly, and Alara felt a pang of disappointment at the loss of his weight. But then, she felt the warm, hard press of him against her entrance, his body a silent promise of more. He gazed down at her, his eyes still dark with desire, but also with a profound tenderness. "Are you ready, my love?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Alara looked up at him, her heart overflowing. She had never felt this connected to another human being, this utterly open, this completely seen. This was more than just physical desire. It was a soul-deep recognition, a profound intimacy she hadn't known was possible. "Yes," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper, but firm in its conviction. "Yes, Julian, I am ready." He moved slowly, deliberately, giving her time to adjust, to accept him. Alara gasped as he breached her, a sharp intake of breath at the newness, the fullness, the absolute rightness of it. There was a brief moment of discomfort, quickly superseded by an overwhelming sensation of completion. He filled her completely, perfectly, and Alara felt a profound sense of belonging, as if she had been waiting for him her entire life. He paused, allowing her body to acclimatize, his eyes searching hers for any sign of pain, any trace of doubt. Alara met his gaze, her own eyes shining with tears of pure emotion, tears of joy, of wonder, of profound gratitude. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him closer, urging him deeper. With a low groan, Julian began to move, a slow, deliberate rhythm that quickly picked up pace. Each thrust was deep, powerful, yet exquisitely controlled, designed to bring her pleasure. Alara responded instinctively, arching against him, meeting his every movement, a primal dance of two bodies intertwined. The bed creaked beneath them, a rhythmic counterpoint to the storm's fury outside. The air in the room grew thick with their combined heat, their mingled scents. Alara's senses were overwhelmed, consumed by the feel of him inside her, the sound of his ragged breaths, the sight of his face, etched with passion. He murmured endearments against her neck, words of adoration, of longing, of fierce possession. "My Alara, you are exquisite. Mine." Each word was a brand, searing itself onto her heart, binding her to him. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his back, her body a taut bowstring, stretched to its absolute limit. The pleasure built again, a new wave, even more potent than the last, coiling deep within her. He found her rhythm, matching it perfectly, pushing her higher and higher, until she was breathless, gasping his name, pleading for release. He drove into her deep and hard, with a final powerful thrust that sent her spiraling over the edge once more. Alara cried out, her body convulsing around him, squeezing him tight. Julian groaned, a guttural sound of pure pleasure, and then he too found his release, pouring himself into her, his body trembling, his head buried in the curve of her neck. They lay tangled together, breathless, spent, their bodies slick with sweat, the scent of their passion thick in the air. The storm outside seemed to have quieted, its rage momentarily subdued, mirroring the serene calm that now settled over them. Julian rolled onto his side, pulling Alara with him, spooning her against his chest. His arm wrapped around her waist, holding her close, possessively. His breathing slowly regulated, his heart still thrumming against her back. Alara nestled into him, feeling utterly safe, utterly cherished. She closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the most comforting sound she had ever known. The silence that followed their shared climax was not empty, but rich, filled with unspoken words, with the profound understanding that had just passed between them. Alara felt a transformation had occurred, a fundamental shift in her very being. She was no longer the quiet, contained woman who had walked into this house. She was alive, vibrant, filled with a passion she had only just begun to understand. He pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head. "Are you all right, my love?" he whispered, his voice still a little hoarse, laced with concern. Ilara stirred, turning her head slightly to look up at him. His eyes, though heavy-lidded, were still intense, still held that profound tenderness. "More than all right, Julian," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. "I have never felt anything like that." A soft smile touched his lips. "Nor I, Ilara," he confessed, his voice surprisingly vulnerable. "Never like this, not with anyone." His words resonated deep within her, a powerful validation of the unique connection they shared. It wasn't just physical, not just fleeting passion. It was something deeper, something that felt ancient and destined. They lay in comfortable silence for a long time, the fire crackling softly in the hearth, casting long dancing shadows across the room. The storm outside had indeed abated, its furious wind now a gentle sigh against the window panes, its rain a soft patter. A sense of peace, profound and encompassing, settled over them. Ilara felt the subtle shift in the air, the easing of the tempest, both outside and within her. She traced the line of Julian's forearm with her finger, feeling the strength of his muscle beneath her touch. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, a comforting heat that chased away any lingering chill. "Julian," she began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. What does this mean?" He was quiet for a moment, his arm tightening around her. "It means," he said, his voice low and serious, "that my world has been irrevocably altered, Ilara. And I hope yours has too." He shifted, gently turning her to face him. He propped himself up on one elbow, gazing down at her, his eyes searching hers, asking the unspoken question. "It has," she confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Completely. I don't know who I was before tonight." He smiled then, a tender, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. He reached out, his thumb gently stroking her cheekbone. "You were always beautiful, Ilara. You just needed to be seen." The words were simple, yet profound, touching a deep chord within her. She had always felt unseen, overlooked, a ghost in her own life. But Julian saw her. He truly saw her, in all her vulnerability, all her burgeoning passion, all her hidden depths. He leaned down, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her lips. It was a kiss of promise, a kiss of commitment, a kiss that spoke of a future neither of them could yet fully comprehend, but one they both instinctively knew they wanted to explore. "Sleep now, my love," he murmured, pulling the silken sheet up over them, tucking it around her shoulders. "Rest. The dawn will bring new questions, but for tonight, let us simply be." Ilara nodded, her eyelids heavy. She felt a deep contentment she had never known, a sense of belonging that resonated to her very core. She closed her eyes, her hand finding his, their fingers intertwining. She drifted off to sleep, enveloped in his warmth, his scent, his presence, knowing that her world had indeed expanded, irrevocably and wonderfully. The storm had passed, but a new, exhilarating journey had just begun. The first tendrils of dawn, pale and tentative, filtered through the tall windows, painting the room in hues of soft grey and rose. Ilara stirred, a gentle sigh escaping her lips as she burrowed deeper into the warmth beside her. The scent of him, a primal, earthy aroma mingled with the lingering trace of their shared passion, filled her senses, a comforting anchor in the quiet morning. She opened her eyes slowly, the world coming into soft focus. Reese. His name formed silently on her tongue, a new, cherished word. He was still asleep, his dark hair falling across his forehead, his strong arm draped possessively over her waist. The rise and fall of his chest beneath her cheek was a steady rhythm, a lullaby of peace. She traced the line of his jaw with a fingertip, a faint stubble rough against her skin, and a smile blossomed on her face. This was real. More real than anything she had ever known. A comfortable silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the distant calls of early birds and the soft creak of the old house. She lay there, simply being, absorbing the quiet miracle of their togetherness. The contentment she felt was profound, a deep, resonant hum within her soul. It wasn't just the physical pleasure of the night, potent as it had been. It was the unburdening of her heart, the discovery of a profound connection that had been waiting patiently for her to find. After a while, Rhys stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he met her gaze with a sleepy, tender smile that melted her completely. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. "Morning," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. She leaned up, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to his lips. It was a kiss of gratitude, of wonder, of burgeoning love. He pulled her closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her skin. "You slept well?" "Better than I've ever slept," Elara confessed, her eyes shining. "Like coming home." He squeezed her, a silent acknowledgement of the depth of her words. "I felt it too," he said, his gaze searching hers. "Every minute of it." He paused, a new seriousness entering his eyes. "Elara, last night. It was everything I hoped for, and more." Her heart swelled. "Me too, Rhys. I don't even have the words." They remained entangled for a long time, sharing soft kisses, quiet touches, and the comfortable intimacy of a new morning. Eventually, hunger stirred, and Rhys suggested breakfast. They moved slowly, bodies still humming with the afterglow of their passion, but now infused with a lightness, a joyous ease. Downstairs, the kitchen, bathed in the gentle morning light, felt different. It was no longer just a room. It was a space imbued with their shared history, however brief. Rhys moved with an effortless grace, brewing coffee that filled the air with a rich, inviting aroma, and preparing a simple breakfast of fresh fruit and warm, crusty bread he'd clearly baked himself. Elara watched him, a quiet fascination blooming in her chest. He was a man of many layers, she realized, a blend of rugged strength and tender care, of ancient wisdom and modern practicality. As they ate, perched on stools at a rustic wooden counter, they talked. Not about the storm, or the immediate past, but about their lives, their dreams, their unspoken fears. Elara found herself sharing parts of her journey she hadn't voiced to anyone, the quiet yearning for something more, the feeling of being an observer rather than a participant in her own life. Rhys listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers, offering not just understanding, but a profound resonance that made her feel truly seen. He in turn spoke of his own path, of his connection to this land, to the rhythms of nature, and the solitude he had embraced, not as an escape, but as a path to clarity. "I never thought I'd find someone who understood," he confessed, reaching across the counter to take her hand. His touch was warm, reassuring. Someone who felt the pull of something deeper, something beyond the superficial. "I always felt like I was searching for it," Elara admitted, her fingers intertwining with his. "Searching for, oh, I suppose. And I found it. Here. With you." The air between them crackled with an unspoken understanding, a silent promise. The physical intimacy of the night before had forged a link, but this morning, through shared vulnerability and quiet conversation, they were weaving the threads of their souls together. As the morning wore on, the sun climbed higher, warming the house, chasing away the last vestiges of the storm's gloom. A lightness entered the atmosphere, a playful spark in Rhys's eyes as he cleared away the breakfast dishes. He leaned against the counter, watching her, a slow, sensual smile playing on his lips. "So," he began, his voice a low purr that sent a shiver down her spine. "The storm has passed. What about that exhilarating journey we spoke of?" Elara felt a flush rise to her cheeks, a delicious flutter in her stomach. The memory of his touch, his lips, his body against hers, surged through her. The daylight, far from diminishing the intensity, seemed to enhance it, stripping away the shadows and revealing a raw, unadorned desire. She met his gaze, a challenge and invitation in her eyes. "I believe that journey is just beginning, wouldn't you say?" He pushed off the counter, moving towards her with a slow, deliberate grace that made her heart pound. "I would say," he murmured, his hands reaching for her waist, pulling her gently against him. The soft fabric of her dress, borrowed from his cabin, was a thin barrier against the heat of his body. And I believe the first leg of that journey is best explored without the distractions of the mundane. His lips found hers, a tender, hungry kiss that deepened quickly, igniting the embers that had been smoldering since dawn. This kiss was different from the ones in the darkness. It was open, full of the light of discovery, a shared joy that transcended words. His hands moved from her waist, tracing the curve of her spine, pulling her even closer until there was no space left between them. Ilara's hands found their way to his hair, her fingers tangling in the soft strands as the kiss intensified, becoming a fervent exploration of taste and touch. She felt herself melt into him, her body arching, seeking the undeniable comfort and thrilling pleasure of his embrace. The world outside the kitchen faded, replaced by the symphony of their breaths, the soft sighs that escaped their lips, the exquisite friction of their bodies. He lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist, and carried her from the kitchen, through the sun-drenched hallway, and back towards the sanctuary of the bedroom. The journey was slow, punctuated by stolen kisses, by the brush of their skins, by the intoxicating scent of their combined desire. Once they reached the bedroom, bathed now in golden sunlight, he lowered her gently onto the bed, following her down, his weight a comforting pressure. He leaned over her, his eyes, dark and intense, drinking her in. "You are breathtaking, Ilara," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Her reply was a soft gasp, as his lips found the sensitive skin of her neck, trailing a path of fire downwards, to the hollow of her throat, where her pulse fluttered wildly. His touch was both knowing and exquisitely tender, awakening every nerve ending, every dormant desire within her. He was a master of sensation, drawing out her pleasure with an unhurried artistry, building the tension with teasing touches and lingering kisses that promised everything. The clothes they wore seemed to vanish with a whisper, shed in the urgency of their rekindled passion. Skin met skin, a thrilling revelation in the bright light of day. Her hands explored the sculpted planes of his back, the firm muscle under her fingertips, a testament to his connection with the land. He tasted the salt on her skin, inhaled the unique fragrance of her essence, his senses wholly consumed by her. Their lovemaking in the morning light was a symphony of touch, a dance of desire that was both primal and profoundly intimate. It was slower, more deliberate than the urgency of the night, allowing them to truly see each other, to explore every curve, every dip, every rise with a newfound wonder. Rhys moved with a powerful grace, his body a perfect counterpoint to hers, their rhythms intertwining until they were a single harmonious entity. Ilara cried out, her voice a raw expression of pleasure, as he guided them towards the precipice, holding her there, suspended in a state of exquisite tension, before finally gently allowing them to fall together into the depths of their shared climax. It was a release that shook her to her core, a wave of pure, unadulterated bliss that washed over her, leaving her breathless and utterly sated. As their heartbeats slowly returned to a calmer rhythm, they lay tangled together, bathed in the golden glow of the afternoon sun. Ilara rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heart, feeling utterly cherished, utterly complete. The exhilarating journey had indeed begun, and it was more profound, more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. Rhys stroked her hair, his fingers gently tracing patterns on her scalp. "This," he murmured, his voice soft, "this is what I've been waiting for." "For you?" Ilara lifted her head, meeting his gaze. There was an honesty, a vulnerability in his eyes that mirrored her own. "And I for you," she replied, a tear of pure joy escaping and trailing down her temple. "My world. It feels so vast now, so full." He kissed her forehead, a promise in the gesture. "It's only just beginning, my love. A new chapter, a new life, with you by my side." She nodded, a deep sense of peace settling over her. The storm had indeed passed, leaving behind not just a cleared sky, but a landscape forever transformed, imbued with the vibrant colors of love and belonging. Her journey had led her through unexpected paths, through the heart of a tempest, only to deposit her safely, wonderfully, into the arms of the man who held her heart. The dawn had brought not just new questions, but the most beautiful answer of all. Elara closed her eyes. The warmth of Reese's embrace, the scent of him, the promise of their shared future, enveloping her in a love she knew would last beyond any storm, beyond any dawn, into a lifetime of exhilarating journeys.